did work. Wow. All right. We are live. Apologize about my tardiness and crazy posting schedule, but we're in the middle of retreat, and so is the audio okay? Do you have your phone on you? No? People were telling me the audio was too quiet yesterday, so I just wanted to double check and see, but I guess I'm just not going to know. Let's see. I'll turn it up a little bit here. There we go. Still looking a little quiet, Check, 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 check. That should be good. Okay. All right, guys. So lots of interesting things. I hope you guys are following me on Substack. That's too much, sorry. On Substack, I'm about to publish a post that is something I've been working on for a long time in regards to the true contents of the Kaikion, which were proposed to be ergot by Albert Hofmann, which I thought was patently ridiculous. Because people would have died horrible deaths during the experimentation process, and also it would make a very weak beverage that wouldn't account for the life-transforming visions. And then Freemasons are still buried with acacia sprig, and the symbolism for the Egyptians of acacia is identical to that of the Greeks and the Freemasons, and it also reflects DMT experience. And then I found an old painting of Thoth Hermes, who is the Hermes Trismegistus archetype, initiating a pharaoh with Isis in front of an acacia tree. So another bit of evidence. And then last night's stream on thaumaturgy, Levi he wasn't drawing parallels deliberately because he doesn't know, but there were a lot of parallels described, like taking medicine through the nose as the best method, which is how ayahuasqueros and indigenous people do it. Reason being that there are metabolic salts and enzymes. We keep redlining. Let me turn this down a bit. Metabolic salts and enzymes in the stomach that change the ratios of the alkaloids. Whereas if they're taken through the nose, you get exactly as nature prepared. And also he was describing adopting certain archetypal personalities in order to heal, just like a shaman, and on and on. And so the fact that these practices are the same in this Hermetic tradition as they are in the ayahuasca tradition, and the two plants that I'm proposing were the contents of the Kaikion, it's like evidence that they were all taught by the same plant compounds, right? So super cool. If you're not following that, you should, because it's going to be a great series. And today I wanted to get back into the degree 14 because that is also tremendously important stuff. And yes, let's get into it because I don't have a ton of time. We have ceremony in a little bit, and I got to go light the fire. So where were we? This we already read, but I'm going to start here anyways. Religion, to obtain currency and influence with the great mass of mankind, must needs be alloyed with such an amount of error as to place it far below the standard attainable by the higher human capacities. A religion as pure as the loftiest and most cultivated human reason could discern would not be comprehended by or effective over the less educated portion of mankind. What is truth to the philosopher would not be truth, nor have the effect of truth to the peasant. The religion of the many must necessarily be more incorrect than that of the refined and reflective few, not so much in its essence as in its forms, not so much in the spiritual idea which lies latent at the bottom of it, as in the symbols and dogmas in which that idea is embodied. The truest religion would, in many points, not be comprehended by the ignorant, nor consolatory to them, nor guiding and supporting for them. So I just wanted to touch on that before we move on, so we kind of back where we left off. Well, this is pretty relevant too. A perfectly pure faith, free from all extraneous admixtures, a system of noble theism and lofty morality, would find too little preparation for it in the common mind and heart to admit of prompt reception by the masses of mankind. And truth might not have reached us if it had not borrowed the wings of error. And so one of the points of contention I have with this attitude is that if we were to educate people properly, they would be properly prepared to receive this kind of knowledge. And it's the reason that in the ancient mystery traditions, Sorry, I've got a chunk like a rock in my mouth or something. The activator sometimes has pebbles in it. Uh, it's the reason that Pythagoras taught number and geometry, and that initiates were required to study philosophy and even politics, because all of these things create a sort of awareness of the algorithm that underlies all of creation in the subconscious mind. That's a huge part of where the knowledge actually emerges from, because we're largely talking about something that's not inculcated through, how would you say, like elucidation. It's not something that is a dogma that is memorized and that you commit to trying to adhere to. It is a matter of inculcating and comprehending patterns, basically. Really, at the end of the day, it's all about patterns, and seeing these relationships between mathematics and philosophy and everything else. There's the wiring under the board, the underlying theme. And when he's talking about how the common mind and heart isn't prepared, that's what he really means, that you have to have a very sophisticated understanding of nature, and the ignorant masses can't quite do that. And it's like, okay, well, Mr. 33rd degree Freemason with all this power, why don't you guys just educate the masses so that we can have an illuminated humanity? And I have to admit that there are many contradictions. Pike claims to be working towards this great revolution prepared for by the ages, but occasionally you do notice things that suggest otherwise, that it's something that is occulted from them. And it's also fair to say of Pike that he didn't have all the power. And he was also warning us that the lodge had gone awry and that people were losing focus on the mission. So, that may be the explanation, that there is not enough unity, obviously there isn't, within the higher ranks to execute this mission cleanly. Obviously it's not happening with any concision. But I think that if it wasn't happening at all, we would have already very obviously lost, So anyways, don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but definitely stuff to think about. So, the illuminated believes that mankind should make a great step forward. Look at that. Or achieve some pregnant discovery. And so he calls into being his intellect and develops it to more than an ordinary magnitude and power to give birth to ideas and grander conceptions of the truths that are vital to humanity. We hold that God has so ordered matters in this beautiful and harmonious but mysteriously governed universe that one great mind after another will arise from time to time, as such are needed, to reveal to men the truths that are wanted and the amount of truth that can be borne. He so arranges that nature and the course of events shall send men into the world endowed with that higher mental and moral organization in which grand truths and sublime gleams of spiritual light will spontaneously and inevitably arise. These speak to men by inspiration. And that is really crucial and critical, because we look around the world and we wonder, why not yet? Why is this process so slow? Why, if it's possible to disseminate this kind of knowledge and to lift up humanity, why not just do it in the beginning? And I think probably anyone watching this video probably doesn't need that explained to them at this point, but it has to do with the law of necessity, it has to do with process, and it has to do with transactions. Everything comes at a cost. Resistance is commensurate with reward. If things are not paid for, then it's not really real. It's like a dream. And I don't know about you, but I generally value my experiences in my waking life more than in my dreams. Part of that is derived from the fact that it took work and it took process to make it real, you know. So that's an aspect of that. And then also in micro, one of the reasons I believe that that is true, that there is a plan, and that the information and the experiences are presented to humanity, like add the right spice at the right time to rise above all the dirt and grime, is because I routinely experience that. There are things that really appear to have been withheld from my awareness until exactly the right moment that I really should have seen otherwise. But if I had encountered them, it would have sort of ruined or it would have lessened the impact when the thing actually came into my awareness, right? So that kind of experience I've had so often and so consistently, although sometimes it's confusing because it seems like there was time lost and that it would have been better sooner. But generally with these things, I also tend to realize that it may have given me too much power before I had enough understanding, or it would have put me in a position that although I wanted to have that sooner, it would have been to my detriment. So it's really helpful. One of our main tools is to remember that all negative experiences and destruction, chaos, death, all of these things are actually fuel for transmutation into the things that we want, right? So as they occur and seem out of place or senseless, we just have to remember that, and then we can recontextualize, and then also we can oftentimes figure out where things are going based on the type of fuel that we or humanity is receiving at any given moment. You know, if there's a negative thing, what is its opposite? And then you can kind of try to fit that into the framework and oftentimes figure out almost prophetically what's going on. He so arranges that nature in the course of events shall send men into the world endowed with the higher mental and moral organization in which grand truths and sublime gleams of spiritual light will spontaneously and inevitably arise. Whatever Hiram Abiff really was, he is an archetype, perhaps an imaginary archetype to us of humanity in its highest phase, an exemplar of what men may and should become in the course of ages. In his progress toward the realization of his destiny, an individual gifted with a glorious intellect, a noble soul, a fine organization, and a perfectly balanced moral being, an earnest of what humanity may be and what we believe it will be hereafter in good time, the possibility of the race made real. And that's really what I think our moment right now is. You know, there's a lot of indications in these old writings of Pike and Crowley and Levi and even Thoth in the Lament of Thoth in the Book of Asclepius that really seem to indicate that this is the period. You know, actually the Quero in the high Andes who escaped even the Inca by going as high as they could, and then when the foreigners came, they went even higher. So to this day, they're up at like 19,000 feet. And they had this prophecy that their shaman told them, when you see the condors going extinct, you know, there's less condors. He wouldn't have used the word extinct, obviously, but less condors. The lagoons are drying up, and there will be an earthquake in Cusco that will reveal, or there will be an earthquake that will reveal hidden gold, Incan treasure. And that earthquake happened in like 1987, and and you'll see a metal bird. So all of these things happened in like 1986 or 1987, and they came down, and the shaman had told them, when you see these things, go and tell the outsiders that they're about to destroy the world if they don't get it together. And it will be okay, but there will be 4 years of chaos where it will seem like it's not going to be okay. And then the eagle and the condor will fly together, and basically humanity will achieve a sort of collective illumination. So, you know, we have an awful lot of congruent prophecy that really points to the now. And the responsibility we all have is that nothing is guaranteed, everything is a gamble, and there is failure. So we have to really come into alignment ourselves in this moment. And I'm even on the fence about whether external effort is even necessary, because the way that energy is entrained, the way that consciousness is entrained, it very well may be that your internal developments will express externally, and that's really all your responsibility is. And I see a lot of evidence of this playing out in the world around people. For example, I had a client who had some stuff going on with certain women and his mom who had the same disposition, and I could tell when she was going to contact him and what the context was going to be based on the behavior of the women, And there was another context where that applies that just came up again recently, where the change in the person corresponded with an external development in a way that is really obviously connected. And if you really pay attention, you'll see that happen pretty constantly. So I'm also mentioning all this because it's really difficult to imagine even a unified front of revolutionaries being able to have any kind of impact with the machine's opposition. And it's just not true that every individual has influence that can't be traced or tracked, which is also nice. And there has been research that has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the more developed the consciousness of an individual is, the more impact they have. So if you just keep raising yourself up, you have a way more impact than you probably believe. Okay, so how much time? Oh, we're almost out of time, so let's do another maybe paragraph or so. The illuminated person believes that the universal mind has arranged this glorious but perplexing world with a purpose and on a plan. He holds that every man sent upon this earth, and especially every man of superior capacity, has a duty to perform, a mission to fulfill, and a baptism to be baptized with. That every great and good man possesses some portion of God's truth, which he must proclaim to the world, and which must bear fruit in his own bosom. In a true and simple sense, he believes all the pure, wise, and intellectual to be inspired, and to be so for the instruction, advancement, and elevation of mankind. That kind of inspiration, like divine omnipresence, is not limited to the few writers claiming to be Jews, Christians, or Muslims, but is coextensive with the whole human race. It is the consequence of a faithful use of our faculties. Each man is its subject, God is its source, and truth its only test. It differs in degrees as the intellectual endowments, the moral wealth of the soul, and the degree of cultivation of those endowments and faculties differ. It is limited to no sect, age, or nation. It is wide as the world and common as God. It was not given to a few men in the infancy of mankind to monopolize inspiration and bar God out of the world. We are not born in the dotage and decay of the world. The stars are beautiful as in their prime, and the most ancient Hebrew... Wait, what? Oh, the most ancient heavens are fresh and strong. God is still everywhere in nature. Wherever a heart heats with love, wherever faith and reason utter their oracles, there is God, as formerly in the hearts of seers and prophets. No soil on earth is so holy as the good man's heart. Nothing is so full of God. This inspiration is not given to the learned alone, not alone to the great and wise, but to every faithful child. Certain as the open eye drinks in the light, do the pure in heart see God, and he who lives truly feels him as a presence within the soul. The conscience is the very voice of deity. I can get behind all of that. Mother Teresa once said that she never felt the presence of God once in her life. And it came out that she was an absolute fraud and a horrible person. And that's why, because I felt like I had felt the presence of the divine pretty consistently. And I was shocked to hear this until I realized that she was not sincere. And no person can be really sincere enough without having their sovereignty. Because if your job is a meaningless lie, if you have to hide behind a facade for social lubricant. You know what I mean? If you have to make concessions to these things at all, then you are compromising your sovereignty and you are limiting your connection with divinity. And it's a very difficult task. It's something that I was really, even myself, only able to fully commit to for a few years. And the result of that was absolutely that my wildest dreams that were also in service to humanity were offered to me, shoved at me, really, almost forced upon me on a silver plate, but it did work. And this is the reason that we must establish our complete independence and sovereignty from government, religion, family that's not conducive to it, friends that aren't conducive to it, with absolute conviction, because there's really no compromise if this is truly your goal. So I have to go to ceremony now. Thank you guys so much for supporting, and I'll see you all in a few days.